Hi, welcome to the TC. My name's David and today we're taking a look at the iPad mini 7 in 2026, and more importantly, why I actually decided to buy one this year. Now on paper, this is kind of a weird purchase. It's a small tablet in a world where phones are getting bigger and foldables are right around the corner. But after using it, I think the iPad mini fills a very specific gap, and one that honestly makes a lot of sense depending on your setup. So let's break it down: design, hardware, software, quirks, and then I'll explain why I chose this over just waiting for the foldable iPhone. So starting with the design, the iPad mini 7 is basically a refinement of the mini 6, which itself took heavy inspiration from the iPad Pro redesign back in 2018. You've got these flat edges, a super clean aluminum body, and in my case, I picked up the blue color, which looks really good in person I think. It's subtle, but it adds just enough personality. Could be a bit more blue though. The volume buttons are on the top now too, with Touch ID being built into the power button, and the camera is still positioned for portrait use. But it does support center stage, which is nice for video calls. You'll also notice that there's 4 speaker grills, but only 2 of them actually house speakers, which is a little misleading. More on that later. The display sits at around 8.3 inches, and this is where the mini really shines. It's insanely lightweight and portable. It's one of those devices that you can just pick up and hold for long periods without really thinking about it. It generally feels like a digital notebook. The bezels might look chunky compared to modern phones, but they're consistent with other iPads and honestly make it easier to hold. I do think that slimming them though for a future mini would be a huge difference in modernizing this device. Now the 60Hz display does sound dated in 2026, and yeah, it technically is, but it does feel smoother than you'd expect. I do think that the A17 Pro chip in here does help a lot with that. So it doesn't feel as sluggish as older 60Hz devices, but also being laminated and having P3 color support does help it not feel as bad as it sounds. Inside, the iPad mini 7 is powered by the A17 Pro. It's the same chip that you can find in the iPhone 15 Pro, although this version is slightly cut down on the GPU side. That said, performance is still pretty excellent. For everyday tasks like photo editing, even some heavier workloads, it all holds up really well. Honestly, feels pretty close to my M1 iPad Pro in most situations, just with some limitations. Now, one of the biggest limitations is RAM. There's only 8GB of RAM here, which is good, but it does mean that you can't keep as many apps open in the background compared to the higher end M-chip iPads. It does also support Apple Intelligence, which, whether that actually matters right now is debatable, but it's nice for future-proofing. Storage does start at 128GB with options for 256 and 512. Personally, I would recommend going 256 at the very least if you do plan to keep this long term, especially if you're editing photos or storing movies and TV shows. There's also a cellular option, but honestly, I'd just hotspot from your phone and save the money. One of the best parts about this device is the support for the Apple Pencil Pro. For artists or even just casual sketching, it's fantastic. It really turns this into a portable sketchbook. I've been using it for photo editing as well, and the added precision makes a big difference. USB 3 is also another underrated feature, and I can plug directly into my camera and import photos quickly to it, which fits perfectly into my workflow. Charging speeds could definitely be faster though, and there's no official keyboard support besides Bluetooth keyboards, which limits its use as a productivity machine. On the software side, we're running iPadOS 26. Now with iPadOS 27 around the corner, there is going to be some changes, but for this review, I'm going to be talking about 26. So some people love the liquid glass design, some people hate it. Personally, I don't mind it. I think the important part is that the iPad mini runs it without any issues. The biggest upgrade here is definitely multitasking though. The new windowing system is actually super powerful, especially on a device this small. Now it can feel cramped at times, no question, but being able to run YouTube while browsing or editing something while referencing another app, it's a huge step up compared to what you can do on an iPhone. And because it can run both iPad and iPhone apps, it really makes her a really versatile media device, whether you're scrolling social media, watching videos, or doing light work. It just fits really naturally into daily use. Now the iPad mini isn't perfect, not even close. First off, that 60Hz LCD display. It's usable, it's fine, but it's definitely behind the curve. Arguably, it's unacceptable to have on a device like this in 2026. Second, the speakers are kind of underwhelming. My iPhone 16 Pro Max is actually louder, and although the mini does have decent stereo separation, it just doesn't have the punch or loudness that you'd expect. The display itself is also LCD, and while it doesn't look bad, black levels are just okay. It's not OLED or mini LED, and you can definitely tell in darker scenes. Another weird thing is the scaling of the display. The resolution is great, but UI elements can definitely feel a bit small at times. You get used to it, but it's noticeable early on. And then there's the price. At full MSRP, it's hard to justify, especially when the base iPad is quite a bit cheaper. This is definitely a niche device, and if you don't know why you already want it, then you probably don't need it. Personally, I picked up the 256 Blue model for $499 total, And I also grabbed an Apple Pencil Pro for around $68 in a like new condition, which made this a much easier purchase to justify. It does go on sale pretty often, so I would not recommend paying full price. However, it also wouldn't be fair to not mention the huge price increase given to the iPad lineup this year, and the equivalent iPad mini I have is priced at $699 now, and I would have an incredibly hard time justifying it at that price point. Now let's talk about the big question though, why not just wait for a foldable iPhone? Here's the thing, a foldable iPhone is probably going to be expensive, like really expensive. There's a very real chance it ends up costing more than the Pro Max iPhone and an iPad mini combined. Even with the price increases, they're anticipating it costing over $2,000 just to start. And even then, you're making compromises. With a foldable, you're relying on one device for everything, which means battery life becomes more of a concern. With this setup, you've got two separate devices, which I think is actually a huge advantage. You can also avoid things like a crease in the display, potential durability concerns, and unknowns about long-term reliability. This is going to be the first iPhone foldable, and I would argue never to buy a first generation of any new form factor. And then there's the cameras. A foldable iPhone is almost guaranteed to compromise compared to a Pro Max model, whereas this setup lets you keep the best possible camera system on your phone. And on the iPad side, you get Apple Pencil Pro support, something we don't even know will exist on a foldable iPhone yet. Yes, carrying two devices is definitely less convenient, that's the biggest trade-off. But in return, you do get better battery life, better cameras, a better display experience, and more flexibility overall. It really comes down to your use case, convenience versus capability. So why did I buy the iPad mini 7 in 2026? Well, because it fills a gap that nothing else really does. It sits perfectly between a phone and a full-size iPad, it's portable, comfortable to use, and powerful enough for pretty much everything I need on the go. It's not for everyone. The display is dated, the speakers could be better, and the price needs to be just right. But if you're someone who wants a lightweight device for media, editing, drawing, or just a better browsing experience than your phone, I think the iPad mini still makes a lot of sense. And honestly, even with foldables on the horizon, I don't think that this is going away anytime soon. Anyway, that's been my experience with the iPad mini 7 2026. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.